Guatse Dowane, which means hello, my friend, in Laguna Indians. My name happens to be Deer Eyes. I come from up northern part of New Mexico with Kit Carson and Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Jedediah Smith, and what you have to do is go apply to it to become a trapper. Then when you go, they tell you where you can go to, and I come to New Mexico with Kit Carson, who sent me down this direction to the Lee counties. What you do is you travel, you set up a nice camp like this one we are about to show you around. Then you go from there to a small campsite and take it and your horse and your mules and stuff, go down to different towns there to look for skunks, rabbits, deer, elk, coyotes, cougars, whatever. Then you set your trap line up, you go through, and it may take you about 2 to 3 weeks to make your trap line. You cover your trap line, then you come back through, come back, get your supplies, then take your horses and stuff, go back and run your trap line, reset the trap line, then bring them back, skin them, and dry them and prepare the meat and stuff so you have it for later on. Then as you get through that away, you go back through, then you go up to Albuquerque, Santa Fe, that direction, and you have a big rendezvous where you get to show off all your guns. This is what they call a Kentucky long, because as long as it is and as heavy as the barrel is, you take it, you pull your out, you load through the front, push your rod in, you pull back, you put your cap on, and you shoot whatever it is you are. Throwing knives, which are sharp. You have your skinning knife. That's why this is in a curved shape that you cut through and you start skinning. You have your throwing pot. That way if you have to throw it at something, you can get it, throw it, chop wood, drive stakes into the ground, make stakes. Chuck box, which is down below, has all your cooking, your supplies, your salts, your cooking camp gear into it. Then you have, when you're not having out hunting and stuff, you have your Dutch oven, which you do Dutch oven cooking. Tonight we're having chicken with some barbecue sauce wrapped in the good bacon. The candles are made out of beeswax. The beeswax is a paraffin and stuff that is a lot stronger. It lasts longer. It doesn't bring in mosquitoes and flies. So as you're out there, the light is a little bit brighter. And then most of the time on the trap line, you'll be using beef jerky, some kind of a jerky, make bread, kind of feed yourself off the line.
Well, so sure. I mean, the trapper, you're not going for the meat.
No,
you're going for the skins. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what meat you have, you kept enough on it that you could catch, so that will supply you for the day or for the week.
For those of us not overly familiar with New Mexico history, where does this fit in timeline-wise?
1800s.
Okay. Ranchers
Kit Carson come through here, and he was the scout that he was in the Mexican War.
Okay.
He even traveled as far as from here to California, take guiding troops to and from here for the war and stuff, and guided them through. And that's how most of the territories and how the traps and the roads and stuff got through, is because these guys, like Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Jedediah Smith, things too, you had horns, like so that way when you blew the horn, you could tell somebody else where you was at, or it's kind of like, a phone call.
Right, because that sound's going to travel.
It's going to travel, and it's depending on the size of horn, how much you practice with it, is how good you can do it.
What would you have done for water?
You done for water, you caught rain. That's what this is for. The canteens, like one of the canteens that they would have, they fill it, and it's really gross, but the inside of it is beeswax lined.
Okay.
So as you take and fill it with the solder and stuff on it, then you line it so in case there is any leaks or stuff in it. Also, it doesn't rot out the outside, so the beeswax is inside to keep your drink and stuff. So as you're going through, if you found a artesian well or a river or something like that, or rain, you caught the rain and stuff, you filled it and took care of it that way.
So some of it is just kind of hoping it rains. I mean,
yes, or cactus like we have here. You can take some of the cactus, peel it back, and you get moisture from some of the cactus.
Okay.
And it's thanks to trappers like them that we actually know that the prickly pear is edible. And
because you don't want a very big fire, you want a small fire just big enough to keep you warm and to cook your meals on. The reason for it is the more light you have, the more
Sure, and it's so flat you could probably see for
You could see for miles and
miles.
miles here. And the more up you're up in Guadalupe Mountains, you can see for hundreds of miles. If you're up on the top looking out, you can see a small fire for a long ways out.
Wow.
And the lightning and stuff like that will light up. So you've got to have something. The canopy that's there is more like to keep the sun off. It's not much to keep the rain out. So you'd have your leathers, leather pants, leather shirts, which will take better care of going through the mesquites and through the weeds and stuff than these, because these right here will attract. Plus, so if you do the leathers right and they're treated right, they will dissipate the water in the rains and the lakes and stuff, where these will take and soak it in.
What kind of dangers were you faced with here?
Dangers, you'd have the Indians, you'd have coyotes, you'd have cougars. Believe it or not, there are cougars down this part of the area, plus up in the mountains. And then you'd have snakes, rattlesnakes, all kinds of it. You'd have scorpions. So if you're not careful at night, you'd be laying there either on the ground, because a lot of it you just, when you got through, you hobbled your horse, you laid down on the rocks, and you went to sleep still. Then is if you had a good trap line, you had a good traps, you had a lot of furs, the guy that maybe not too far off didn't have anything, he may come in and steal everything you got, then take it up there and sell his stuff.
So your gun, your knife, your tomahawk weren't so much for the trap. I mean, you would set a trap, but you didn't need that for the animal. Your knife
For
and stuff.
protection.
Yes.
Is for protection, a lot of things for it, because if you've seen a deer off or an elk or something like that, then yes, you shot those and you had, for the skins and the food and stuff for it. But most of it was to protect yourself from everything else. And the knives and stuff, that way you had something to skin, clean. Then when you went to rendezvous, you had the competitions where you had to throw your knives and throw your hawk, because you could outdo everybody. You put the card on there, or you put a double bit axe and tried to split it.
And what if something happened? I mean, I'm a klutz. I would trip and fall and break my ankle. Would I just never get found?
I'd hate to say this, and it's really a sad way about it, but if you tripped, you hurt, you got caught by a mountain lion, you got bear mangled you got bit by a rattlesnake, this is a cruel way of putting it. If you don't die in the morning, then you can go finish trapping. Unless you knew basically some of the old remedies about how to take care of the snake bites, to sew yourself up. Some of these guys, when they get cut, they'll get sinew, and what sinew is like cat gut, cow gut, whatever, and they'd take it, peel it, and make string out of it, and then they would sew themselves up, or pull string out of their shirt to sew themselves up, and would go. They would take mud, put on burns to cool it down. There's all kinds of, if you look at some of the history of medicines and stuff that come out those days, you'd wonder how they could even live as long as they. But the living of these guys, you're probably looking, while they was actually doing their trapping and stuff, they was in their early 20s to late 20s that was out there. Then once they got good enough, they paid the company store back, they got all their traps and stuff, they couldn't go, then they sponsored somebody else that took them. It was the original pyramid deal.
Okay.
You work for me, then you hire somebody else to work with you, then you hire somebody else down. You bring it all in, you sell it. And some of these guys didn't live really past 40, 50 years old. Some of them was up in years that you could retire earlier, that wasn't hurt really bad. But once they started doing this, the stores and stuff, very few of them, but the trapping and stuff really wasn't that long of an era. Just 1800s, and after that, the trains come through, the telegraph, the stagecoaches and stuff started coming through, so a lot of this stuff actually went away. The cavalry come through, they started settling in New Mexico, Arizona, California because of the mighty gold rush. I wasn't brave enough to go to the gold rush. And so once you get that, then the trapping and stuff pretty well went away, because most of the settling in the towns and stuff started cropping up. Water was found, cattle was there. So this was only for just a few, like 20 years or less. Most people thought it was for a long, long time, but it was only for a short time.
Did you have a horse or a mule or something to help you
generally you had a horse. These guys were loners. They were out there to make a living, and when if they had a wife and stuff back in St. Louis or wherever, they might see them once a year, twice a year. So it was really tough. And these guys didn't have the modern stuff. It wasn't as easy as what they think it is. Because setting a tent up like this takes roughly around an hour to set up a camp and to tote it on the back of a horse and up and down in the heat. Because you're looking right around this part area, 100 to 110 degrees, 100 degrees in the shade. So you basically got up early in the morning, you hunted, or late in the afternoons during the rest of the day. Everything was laying down and staying out of the shade. So in the tents, you had a stove to keep you warm. You had a little coffee pot. I mean a little coffee pot. You had your filter. You had your cup. This is what you drink out of. This is what you warmed your stuff up with. You had a water. That's why you didn't drink a whole lot, because you didn't have. If you had your black tea, you filtered it, you crushed it with rocks, put it in a cloth, you filtered it, you put it on the stove, and you cooked. You had a cot, if you had one, or you slept on the floor, and you had a wool blanket. The reason why you had a wool blanket, it kept you dry, it kept you off the ground. If it was raining, you could keep warm, or it made you a mattress to sleep on. And other than that, you didn't have a whole lot of luxuries. You had, like I said, a lantern, stove, bed, and if you could get some skin, you throwed it on the floor and made your carpet.
Now, the one question that I know that the kids are probably all going to ask, how did you use the bathroom?
Real simple. You walked out, you found you a tree, or you went behind your tent, and you took care of business. If it's raining, you went over the side, you dug a hole inside the tent, you took care of your business. You covered it up.
How about a windstorm
Windstorm,
or a sandstorm?
sandstorm stuff, you basically, if it was out there on the line, you hobbled your horse, you took care of it, and you basically pulled the blanket over your head or your shirt and you just sat there until it went down, or you got it between the rocks or a tree or something to that nature. You took care of whatever you could do to take care of yourself. Jedediah had his company, and each company had a name for it, as far as the company store, Jedediah Smith's store and stuff. Kit Carson had his up there, and the group that I'm with is Royal Rangers. Other than that, you took care of everything else. You went to that store, you sold your stuff to them, and they took care of it. They gave you your salt. You had a little bitty cow horn full of salt to take care of your meat and cook it. You either took a stick or your knife and you used it as a fork or a spoon or whatever. They didn't have a lot of things.
Did trappers settle here, or did they just kind of move where they needed to be?
Most of them moved around. Some of them that got tired quit trapping, and they found somebody to live with.
What kind of traps would you have used?
There's
I assume
several.
you have to bring that along with you.
You'd have to bring straps. They had the ones that clamped around their feet, legs, snares. You'd take a piece of wire, you'd take and hook it to a tree, make a loop, and as it went through, it would catch around its neck and pull. So it's whatever you could make. Fall trap, take a rock, put a log on the top of it, put some feet inside, and as the deer, the rabbit, squirrel, whatever run through it, hit that log, it'd fall, and the rock would fall in and kill it.
Those are nice because you're not carrying it with you. You can find it.
A lot of it you learn how to take and make your own.
So why don't we talk about trappers? I mean, we talk about buffalo hunters and the Spanish.
And the Native Americans.
Because most of them, the stuff, or there's very few that people know about them, and it's part of it. It's like some of the stuff that Commander George Washington did, things we just don't talk about because it was such a short time era, and there's not a whole lot of history on it because these guys traveled around so much, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it, because it is a lost art. And really, the trappers and stuff was a small small group. There wasn't a whole lot of them, and the history is just pretty well died from it.
Well, no one wrote it down.
Nobody
so.
wrote it down because, hey, I told the story about how this happened or how that happened. There's a lot of roads and stuff done by a lot of towns by the crafters, and a lot of good things that they have done as far as settlements and settlings and making ways to get through and out. And I have a lot of respect for the trappers because it was a hard life, and a lot of them went out and never come back, and because they either starved or died of thirst, heat exhaustion, or fell down, broke a leg, or something like we was talking about all day. Just one of those things. It just didn't happen, or they decided to quit and move off, do something else. The gold rush took a lot of them and made them go do it. They'd rather have gold and stuff